You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show.
70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there.
The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Cris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the Rite Retirement Show.
Hello there, I'm Luann Fulmer, and welcome to our show, the Rite Retirement Show, with certified financial planner and financial advisor Cris Wallace. He is president at WG Financial Group, and also joining us from the firm is Graham Bauer. He is a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and also an enrolled agent at the firm. And of course, they're both here today to give us helpful advice about retirement planning. And here's the phone number. If you have questions, you can get answers. And I might add, complimentary, 256-937-2010. That's how you can reach out to Cris and our team for a complimentary visit. You may call the number. You can also text VISIT if you prefer texting. Text the word VISIT to 256-937-2010. Remember, you can check us out on Facebook throughout the week. Just search for WG Financial Group 256. Remember our motto, plan, retire, play. You're going to hear a lot about that today. You can find us online at wgfinancialgroup.com. And remember, this show is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search for the Rite Retirement Show. So excited to get started. Hello to you, Cris and Graham.
Hey, Luann, good to be here.
Thanks.
Hey, Luann, good to talk to you as always.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have some exciting stuff to get to today. And first of all, what I love is this real talk that we do. And I can't wait, Graham, to hear what you have for us this week.
Yeah, so today, it's kind of funny. Over the weekend maybe, or I don't know, one of these nights this week, I came across a video. And I actually sent it to Cris because I thought it was kind of funny, just in what the guys were talking about, very seriously, where it was kind of a bit of a silly comment to make. And he was like, oh my gosh, I saw this video too, actually. This got recommended to me. So I guess we have similar feeds then. But the gist of it was essentially someone saying that, you shouldn't just invest in the S&P 500 because more speculative things like cryptocurrencies have returned much, much, much more over the last 10 years or so, which, it is on the surface like, yeah, you could just pull up the numbers between one and the other and make that comment and say, yeah, you would have been way better off to do that. But I mean, that's kind of like saying, yeah, you would have been way better off to just know the winning lottery numbers yesterday and just pick those, and then you would have won $1 million. So I thought it was kind of obviously a bit of a silly thing to say that, people are not smart for putting their money here because, the S&P only returns 8% a year and you could be getting 100% a year potentially by picking something very speculative. But it just kind of reminded me, as I feel like, with the markets doing really well, even with some of those alternatives kind of markets doing really well at the moment, we're getting back into this time with a lot of media, especially social media, where people are going to start seeing a lot more things similar to this. And just a couple weeks ago, there was an executive order signed, and I don't think this is going to be in play probably for a little while as everyone catches up, but that there will be at some point in the future, most likely, the option to have types of alternatives invested inside of 401ks. So think like private equity type things, as well as cryptocurrency. And I think that as the world moves into having more options like this, for some people, they might really like that and think that's a good thing if they're someone who wants to be really speculative and super risky. But for other people, I feel like the limits of a 401k plan were sometimes a little bit helpful in the sense that, it was harder to make really dumb decisions with your money than it can be if you're just open to, the worldwide anything. And I know some 401ks have broker links, but it just kind of reminded me that I think a lot of people currently, and even more so in the future, have a reason that it's good to have a voice of reason, like an advisor in your back pocket to talk to before you say, hey, I have this ability to do this now inside of my 401k, or, I saw this investment online and thinking it was maybe a good idea to, just have a sounding board of someone you can go to, say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this a really bad idea or not? Because again, with more options, I think comes just, more ability to make those big mistakes. So I don't know what your thoughts about that are, Chris, but I feel like I've been seeing more content similar to that. And, just with that order, the executive order getting signed and everything, I just think it's, all the more reason for someone to, be getting good, sound advice.
No, I agree. You mentioned having an advisor in your back pocket, and I'm just sitting here thinking that I'm kind of a tall guy. I probably won't fit in the back pocket that easily. But yeah, no, I think one of the things that I said on my Facebook page as soon as I saw it come across the feed that had been signed was, I hope there are limits, so that you can't put all of it in crypto, for example, because I think that there's a problem in doing that. There's a big risk in doing that. So I'm hoping that somewhere buried in this bill, and once it works its way through, because you said that it's going to take a while for it to go into play, and that's because companies have to catch up, plans have to be updated, and I think, or at least I'm just hoping that they kind of max the percentages that you can put in those types of asset classes, because they do carry a different level of risk. And I think if you just look at the stats on who buys lottery tickets and things, it can have that same effect in a 401k. Somebody that's behind on retirement savings, for example, may say, well, I've got to, I got to make this up. And something we haven't talked about yet, but how do most people pick their 401k funds? They look at the history, right?
Yeah.
So
which ones return the most?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine looking at Bitcoin's, for example, using Bitcoin as an example, the last 10-year return has been 10,000%. So it's like, all of my money needs to go there.
Yeah.
So I think it can be very dangerous as well. And I just hope that they put some constraints so that people don't get greedy, because that's what can happen for sure.
Yeah. And it's good and we talk about this all the time, but, if people want to mess around with a little bit of their own money that you can afford to lose on your own time, I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world occasionally, just like it's not the worst thing in the world to occasionally buy a Powerball ticket when it hits $1 billion. But, if your retirement plan is buying those Powerball tickets every time it hits $1 billion, you probably don't have a very good one.
I totally agree. Totally agree. By the way, when it hits $1 billion, do you normally buy?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're almost obligated to at that point.
I do.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's, I've actually heard, and I don't know if this is true at all, so take this for what it's worth, but that they've made it a little bit harder to, or the odds even less likely, so it gets to higher numbers more, because more people who don't play the lottery tend to play when the numbers get really high, which is true, I guess in a lot of people's case, but I don't know. That's just something I heard that could be not true.
Are you saying the lottery's like Vegas now?
Maybe. I mean, it's all Vegas. Everything's Vegas to some extent.
Yeah. Good stuff, though.
Yeah,
good stuff,
that's really good. Love it. Love the
Mhm.
real talks. All right. So now let's get to some federal minutes. What do you have for us, Chris? What's been going on?
Yeah. So I was looking at an article on Fed Week, and I just kind of wanted to point out, and actually, oddly enough, I had forgotten we were going to do this specific reel and kind of where that conversation was going to go. So this kind of ties into that just by chance, I guess. God's providence, if you want to say that. So in looking at the TSP and just federal employees, lower paid federal employees, so we were talking about lower income, maybe buying more of the lottery tickets, and or lower paid employees who haven't saved as much for retirement, taking a bigger risk with some of their funds. In the TSP, lower paid feds, actually about 30% of them, and I'm sorry, lower paid feds in general invest about 30% of their portfolio in G. So there's a strong correlation to their investment behavior relative to the income that they're making. So feds that are paid a little bit higher, they only invest 17% of it in G. So I did find that a little bit interesting. Lower income making employees, low income W-2 employees allocate about 30% to the G fund. Now, we know the G fund's a stable fund, and there's this emotional attachment to not losing money. And I can cite my daughter, for example. a few years ago when we set up her Roth IRA. One of the first questions that she asked me was, Daddy, can it lose money? And I said, yes, it can, but it can make money too, And I said, she never looks at it. She always comes to me, Dad, how much is in my IRA? So she doesn't really know. But, even at her age, the fear of losing money, it's a real fear to a lot of people. And so that was interesting to see as well. And then just on the life cycle funds, last year, 53% of participants used at least one L fund. And then 37% of participants used it in addition to some of the other funds. So maybe, for example, they were in CNS and they put a little bit into the life cycle. The life cycle fund is really designed to be an all-in-one fund to essentially target when you're going to retire. So if you're planning to retire in 2030, maybe you have your money in the 2030 fund. And that's kind of what they were really built for, so that the closer you get to 2030, the less risky it should become, theoretically. That's the theoretical part of it. You really have to pay attention to that. But I did also find that interesting in this article as well, is who's using them, how they're using them. And the 37% that are using them exclusively, that those are people that are saying, hey, I don't really know what else to do. And again, I think they were developed for that type of person. But 53 total percent, so there's a percentage of people using it in addition to some other funds that they have in there. So that's just kind of some Fed notes this week. Nothing new and earth-shattering and exciting.
Which is kind
of
good.
A lot of people. Yeah,
Right?
They need a week off.
Right. That no new news of layoffs and that we're aware of in any of the major sectors at this point. I mean, we're hearing rumblings from people that we talk to, but nothing major. And I think the end of September is coming up, so that's like so we got some people that are going to be fully retired at the end of September, and also at the end of December as well. And so if you're a Fed employee and you've been faced with the DRP or VERA or whatever, you can feel free to come in and talk to us, and we'll walk through just your retirement plan moving forward. I know that there are, people hold classes, these groups hold classes. Graham and I are incredibly familiar with federal benefits, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. I would probably say most people, because I know a lot of them in the area that do these Fed benefits, they are not certified financial planner professionals. They're just maybe a licensed advisor, and maybe in some cases a licensed insurance professional. But we have the designation and then also the knowledge behind the federal benefits program.
Right. Yeah. I love that. Okay. And now what about the market? Things have been looking pretty good, right?
Well, as of the last few days, except for the last few days, it's kind of dipped off. So nothing major there. I think the next big news to wait and see is if there's going to be a rate cut in September, and I'm still holding true to that. And I was talking with Graham about that last week in the office, and I said, hey, did you see that there's a 90% chance of a cut? Actually, I'm pulling it up as we talk. It's down to 85 at this point.
Okay.
I'm still leaning towards cut. So when I was talking to Graham, I said, hey, probably a cut in September. And he says, yeah, I think I've changed my mind. I've changed my tune a little bit on that. So we got a good laugh about that.
Yeah. I think right now I can't fight against the statistics too much on this. I mean, we do have, we have about a month to go. So a lot can change in a month.
Oh, a lot can.
And, I wouldn't say that an 85% chance today couldn't be a 40% chance 6 days from now if, something happens with global trade that really spooks the Fed or anything like that. But as of now, it looks pretty probable for a rate cut next month.
Yeah, at one point it was 99%. And then the CPI number came out, and then behind that, the supplier side, the PPI number came out. When the PPI number came out, that is when the Fed fund futures really started to change. We went from a 99 to where we're at today, which is sitting right at about 85%. That's when we saw the biggest changes, when the PPI side, because if the supplier side is costing them more, then usually that'll be passed on to the consumer. Mm-hmm. So you do have to ask yourselves, or we have to ask ourselves, are the tariffs causing some of that? And I still think it's a little bit early to tell that. And there's going to be some fluctuation, but that PPI number came in way above where it was expected. Usually numbers come in a tenth or two above or below. This came in significantly above. So I think when it comes to this rate cut, then the next round of data that comes out will also tell the story.
Okay, excellent. Well, very good. All right, so now what I want to do is get into just something that is the basis of everybody that you help, and that is putting together a retirement plan. I mean, that's the whole point of everything that you do at WG Financial Group. You and Graham work with clients every single day, and on our shows. Oh my gosh, for the past 9 years, Cris, you've said you've got to have more than just your IRA or your 401k. That is not a plan. People think that's their plan. Yeah, I've got a plan for retirement, but you need an actual plan, okay? If you're single or if you have a family. So we're going to dive into that right now, why we feel a retirement plan is important.
Yeah, there's so many things that go into a retirement plan. And as you mentioned, I've said it before, that it's really more than just an IRA statement or a 401k statement. I think as workers, employees, individuals, families, that we do look at that as the major part of our retirement. And it is, but there's a lot of things that are being done automatically for you right now. For example, the taxes that come out of your paycheck every week, all of that's just being done automatically for you. In retirement, you kind of have to figure that out on your own or work with somebody that can help you figure it out. And I would go as far as saying that the only time you really think about taxes is in April, when you do your return and you figure out, do you get money back or do you have to pay? And I think at that time, that's when most people start thinking about taxes. But we're of the mindset that you should be thinking about taxes all year round. So if you've noticed just in the last 30 seconds of me talking, it's been all about taxes. Well, that's just one part of it.
Right.
And we talked about the IRA 401k statement. There's taxes. There's estate and legacy planning. There's income planning. So how much income are you going to need? Where is it going to come from? What type of source to pull it from? So in our view, it does help for families to have a plan. And I've said this a number of times. Huntsville is home to some of the smartest engineers, I would say, in the world. And per capita, we're one of the largest cities that have PhDs. So there's some really, really smart people here. They come in our office. Those people come into our office, and time again, when we sit down with them, we see a lot of good things that they're doing, but we also see some inefficiencies that they can course correct on and make a little bit better. And then there's just some outright changes that we feel like can be made as well. So even though they're really good at building rockets and defense material for our military, there's a lot in terms of retirement that is just unknown to them, and it's just kind of uncharted territory. And I think some people, I think, this is, again, it's personal opinion right here, there's some thrill in trying to plan this out. And I think I would even go as far as saying that maybe it feels good to be able to tell your wife or your husband, hey, I'm planning our retirement. And, for some people, it's just, it's uncharted waters. And I think you have to be careful because, as I mentioned, those individuals and families come in the office, highly intelligent. And I almost never do a meeting where someone is doing everything exactly how I think they should. Usually there's nuggets of value that we're able to give away as families start going through our process. So yeah, Luann, it's more than a statement for sure.
Right. So let's start off then. Why don't you guys just talk about, you kind of did in general, but what does a retirement plan consist of? Walk us through it.
Yeah, our process, I'll walk through the first two areas. So the first thing we'd look at is your retirement income. That's really the foundation of the income stream you're going to have in retirement. We look at three things as guaranteed in retirement. That's Social Security. And I'm kind of laughing in my head a little bit because I know there's people out there laughing, listening to the radio. It's not guaranteed. It's going broke. And I'm not going to disagree. I'm not even going to argue. Other than 20% of the population today is on some form of Social Security, whether that be children benefits, if that's widow's benefits, disability. 20% of the U.S. population is on it. So I don't believe it's going away. I think that it's here to stay, and it'll probably be modified. And I have people come to me all the time. It's going to go broke. I'm worried about it going away. And it's like, we've been having this conversation for 40 years at this point, and it's not going anywhere. So it may look different, but it's not going anywhere. So when it comes to retirement income, there's Social Security. There are pensions, which we've often said are dinosaurs nowadays. The federal government, military. And if you're an older employee that's been with a company for a really long time, they had a pension a long time ago and you're kind of grandfathered in. Outside of that, there aren't very many pensions left. And then annuity income, annuities that have income riders or lifetime income riders. Those are your three major sources. Now, some people are probably saying, well, you don't count rental income as guaranteed. And I don't, because a renter can leave. Something can happen to the house can flood, and you have to do some repair work. And there could be times where there could be an interruption in income. Well, Chris, what about dividend stocks? Well, that's great. All sounds great in theory until the companies decide to reduce or cut their dividend, and then you don't have the same level of income coming in. So there are very specific things that we look at as guaranteed. And then the others are just additional sources of income. And either one of those that I just mentioned, rental income or dividends, that's fine. You can use those, but we can't put them in the guaranteed column. And then when we look at investments, I think most retirees think that as they get closer to retirement, they should reduce risk. And I would say that's right for some, but not right for all, because everyone's situation is different. We mentioned a few minutes ago that we work a lot with military, a lot with federal employees. Well, they have pensions and they have Social Security. So they don't need as much of their other income. So therefore, they can be a little bit more risky. So in the I in the process, the investments, we're looking at the risk level, we're looking at the fees, we're looking at opportunities to where to contribute in terms of retirement plans while they're working. Are they taking advantage of Roth IRAs, et cetera? And then, Graham, I'll let you kind of talk about the T and the E.
Yeah, so the T is the tax side of things, and we touch on this all the time because I think this, for most people, is what really sets apart a basic retirement plan from a really good retirement plan, which is the tax considerations of all of this. Because just in the first two things that we mentioned in retirement income and, investments, starting with retirement income, taxes are all over that. How your Social Security is going to be taxed, how your pensions are going to affect that. If you have disability income, if you're getting dividends, obviously that's, taxable as well. So how you're getting income, trying to get income in the most tax efficient manner possible, is really important right there. On the investment side of things, of course, there's, taking out of your investment accounts can have tax implications. How you're investing your accounts, whether it's a non-qualified account, a brokerage account that you have, maybe funds that spit off too much in dividends and interest or generate, phantom capital gains. There can be all those different scenarios. So taxes are really kind of all encompassing when, you're talking about retirement. And I think one of the most common things that, common question that I get whenever we're talking about this, that, or the other in retirement is, what are the tax implications of that? People wanting to know, okay, if I do that, this is kind of what I want to do, but I don't know how that's going to affect me on taxes. And I don't want to mess anything up there. Because like Chris talked about earlier in the show, when you're working, your taxes are pretty automated for the most part. You can mess up your withholdings and have to pay, and there's things that can happen, but it's mostly just a W-4 form is pretty much all that, stands between you and doing taxes correctly for the year. And, maybe claiming a few credits. So there's so much that goes into it. And then the last part of that is estate planning. And, estate planning is one of the areas that we, try to poke around on and, have people then go talk to estate planning attorneys and get everything in order, because there can be a lot of holes in someone's estate plan. Just in the last few weeks, I've run into, a few people that, had a special needs beneficiary that they didn't have any kind of special needs trust set up for, or, maybe a beneficiary that's not special needs, but they just don't trust that, child to inherit money. And so they're going to give it to another child and have them, give it to the less responsible one. So there are so many times where it's like, yeah, we can't, necessarily do your will for you or do your trust afterwards, but we can say, hey, what do you want for your estate plan? And how can we, get you in contact with the right person to, verify all these recommendations and go forward putting together a really solid estate plan for you as well? Because for most people, estate planning is not so much about taxes as it is about making sure your wishes are honored. For most people, you're not going to have to deal with estate taxes. If you got $30 million or more, then you will. But other than that, you're not really going to have to worry about the estate taxes. You're just going to have to worry about potential probate costs and making sure that all your wishes are honored. Everything is distributed the way that you want it to be. So those are, that's the last two parts of that right process.
Mm-hmm. I would say the last two, and I'm kind of picturing on our board the report card that we do and kind of go through in our second meeting. Usually the top two sections, the R and the I, don't have as much red or opportunity, because what we say is on the report card, when it's red, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong, and we're not, hammering you or calling you out. It's there's a conversation pieces. The red are our conversation pieces. More often than not, when we get down into the T and the E is where we see a lot of opportunity, where I think families are making a lot of mistakes because they don't know. They don't know the law. They are doing things like adding their kids to their bank accounts as owners, as joint owners on the account, which is a horrible idea. In theory, the way that we think about it as we age is, honey, I'm getting older, and I'm worried about us losing our memory, not thinking straight. I just want Johnny to have access to some money. Well, that's great. Don't put Johnny's name on the bank account, because if Johnny gets in a car accident, the account that his name is an owner on is now potentially susceptible to a lawsuit. It could be, included in the lawsuit. So the way around that is to do a power of attorney and just have him as the agent, have it on file at the bank. And, if you don't trust Johnny fully, then make it a springing power of attorney so that it doesn't spring into force until certain things happen. So there's lots and lots of opportunity. And this is all part of that plan. This is why, Luann, on this Rite Retirement report card that we do, we went through the RITE process there. But in looking at that internally, our process touches on about 25 different areas of financial planning. And we're looking at those and reviewing those to see where a family has opportunity, where are they doing things really well, where are they missing the mark, where can we become a little bit more efficient.
So, we often talk on our show. I always bring up surveys or reports indicating, half of U.S. households do not have retirement savings. And, we keep hearing studies about people not being on track for their retirement. Do you think Americans in general are behind, when it comes to their retirement savings?
I do. I don't know about you, Graham, but that's the way I feel.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think it might be just our own bias might be to think not so much, because a lot of the people that we sit down with are, coming in because they've done well saving for retirement and they want to figure out how to distribute. But the population at large, statistics would tell you that. And just, with people you meet, personal experiences, we definitely are a country that thinks a lot more about instant gratification than, long-term preservation and wealth.
Yeah, you're right, Graham. I think the people that generally come to the office have done their savings. They've kind of amassed a nest egg, and they need help with the tax planning side of it, the distribution side, the income planning, all of that. But by and large, I think, and there's plenty of studies out there that show it, that people are just behind. And that a lot of times you'll see these articles released where they have these different age brackets and how much they have saved per age bracket. I think a lot of it has to do with just living in the moment. So there's several things I think it could be. One, things are just more expensive today. I mean, Graham, you know this, you're on the younger side, and trying to buy a house is harder today than it was, say, 5 years ago. I mean, it's a lot easier 5 years ago.
I would kill for a 2.5% interest rate. So,
so mine's 2.75, so I'm still alive.
Well, I won't kill Chris for it. I won't kill Chris.
So yeah, there's that. So things are just more expensive. But then I also think that there's that Amazon factor that we've talked about on the show. We haven't said that in a while, but that was a phrase we coined a couple of years back. And that makes it really easy at our fingertips to spend additional money. So anyway, it's been a good show so far, Lou. And I know we got a whole another half. So those of you who are on the way to church, you're catching the first half. You can hop out to Spotify or Apple Podcast platforms, listen to the whole episode. If you want to set up an appointment, you can do that by calling to set a discovery session, 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010.
If lingering doubts like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement funds endure? Are on your mind, it's time to consult with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010. 2010 to book your appointment and get the answers you need.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Market fluctuations can be unsettling, but a resilient plan can help maintain stability. Discuss how you might fortify your retirement strategy with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010 today to begin. Remember, text VISIT to 256-937-2010.
Yeah, I want to make sure you guys have that number. You may call that number or text the word VISIT. If you're a texter, you can certainly do that as well. And we thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Rite Retirement Show. I'm Luann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace and also Graham Bauer, both of WG Financial Group. And right now we're kind of going through why it's so important to have a retirement plan. What is a plan? Okay. And you guys have kind of outlined what a plan is. And also, answered the question, are Americans behind when it comes to their retirement savings? I want to know if you have this figure. I don't know if you do. What percentage of people actually have an actual written retirement plan? What you would call that?
It's roughly 20%.
20. So, gosh.
Believe it or not, it's roughly 20%.
Yeah.
It's a low number because a lot of times when I'm doing, but that's not a number for me. That's a pretty widely published number that is around 20%. But I can also attest to that number because when I have people come in, that's part of my intake is, all right, what planning have you done so far? Do you have an income plan? Do you have a spousal protection plan? Which, by the way, is, that's one of the things I think as men we got to think about. It's like if we're doing everything and we're spreadsheeting and we've kind of developed our retirement plan and we're like beating our chest, like, oh, look what I've done. What happens if God calls you home? What's your wife going to do about it? Who does she go to? And I've had some people, a handful come in through the years where they've told me, hey, I do everything now, but like your name and your business card is on this folder so that if something happens to me, my wife's supposed to call you. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. But it sure is nice to already have that relationship established ahead of time where you're not trying to, make friends with somebody new, so to speak, at the time during such an emotional transition in their life. So, but yeah, it's a low number of people, Luann.
Very low. Yeah.
Very low.
I'm kind of shocked actually, but it makes sense. And then reiterate again why you feel like a plan is so important, please.
Well, I think if you have things documented down, you kind of have some expectations in place, and then you kind of have a guide to follow. And I'm of the mindset, like your retirement plan, once you've established it and it works and you're comfortable with it, your advisor is comfortable, you really shouldn't have to make a lot of like radical changes to the retirement plan. You should be able to make some tweaks along the way, but nothing like a major shift. If there's a major shift that has to happen in your retirement plan down the road, then I would probably argue that something wasn't figured appropriately or something was left out or something like that. But I'm not seeing a lot of radical changes in plans that we build.
Okay. Now, we often talk about, people and their money and how emotional we get about our money. So as people are nearing retirement, are you seeing they become a little more emotional in retirement?
Graham, I don't know. I'll let you start on this one, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think retirement is incredibly emotional for a lot of people.
And it's not just the money either, right? It's probably leaving their careers behind. That's what I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so much of your identity is tied up in what you do for work. I mean, as Americans, we have a culture that values work a lot, and that people tend to work really hard and work a lot and, want to further themselves in their careers, get credentials, degrees, all that type of stuff, build businesses. And I think it's really tough to walk away from that. I was talking to a current client not too long ago who, is definitely in a place where they could fully retire. Certainly has done a good enough job saving and doesn't live a super frivolous lifestyle, but, is kind of a business owner and grew this business over the years and is having a hard time just thinking about, what do I do with myself if I'm not running this business? The business has kind of been, his identity in a lot of ways, and, just a big thing that he's been doing for many years of his life. So I think that is the first aspect of it for people, is just, do I really want to walk away from something that I've devoted so many years of my life to and just say, that's it? Similar to those other stages of life, of people, when you have your last kid graduate high school, I'm sure, or when, you're really young and you graduate college, those things that you just know, once it's over, and you're not going to go back to that period of your life. So I think that's really tough for people. But along with that, and probably what makes it maybe a little bit harder than even those other periods I just mentioned in life, is that your primary source of financial stability is dropping off pretty much immediately. So, your salary or your, however you get paid, your income from your work is dropping off immediately. And for most people, that is their primary source of financial stability. You can go look at your 401k today. You can be, 35 years old and have 100K in a 401k. And you can look at that and you can think, okay, I have $100,000. That's awesome. But that's not really where your sense of financial stability comes from. If you lost your job today, you would still be stressed out about money, because you're thinking, oh, that's my saving money over there. I don't want to touch that. I only want to spend the money that's coming in from my work. And it doesn't change even if you have $1 million in your 401k for most people, or $5 million. That feeling of, oh, I don't know if I should really touch that money. I want to, spend the money that's coming in from my work. So I think it's a really hard transition for people, but the goal should be to make that transition as smooth as possible and try to maintain a lifestyle where you can enjoy that money that you saved. Because, as we talk about so many times, once you get to a certain point in life, there's really no reason to be saving anymore. And, there's some clients specifically that I have to remind this to almost every time we meet, to say, what are you saving for at this point?
Yeah.
What are we saving up for? Everything's paid for. We got no debt. We got retirement savings. We can have more money going back into a savings account, but that's just inheritance money at this point if it's not getting spent or invested or have some other purpose for it. So it is a hard transition to make, but I think that's why one thing I tell clients all the time when they're in their year that they're going to retire, usually we meet a lot more in that year than we do other years, just because people need a lot of reassurance, and that's really what we're there for.
Yeah, the one thing that I see is as I've been working with clients now for over 20 years at this point, fear. The older we get, the more fearful we seem to become. And this is not everybody. So when I say this, I don't want everybody to say, well, it's not me. Because you're right, maybe it's not you. But there tends to be a fear component. You become worried about things a lot more. Politics is one of them. We tend to worry about politics. And then if you're worried about the market, let's just say you're listening to the show today and you're nearing retirement and you're concerned about the market. So think back to April of this year where the market dropped 20%, or put yourself back in 2022 when the market was down 20% as well. How did you feel about that? And if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel? And you say, probably a 4. Well, you can 10x that feeling when you retire, because there's just something about not having a job and W-2 income and your identity, as Graham mentioned. Now you're off in retirement and you have your basket of money that you've saved. And now the market becomes volatile, because I think what people tend to forget about is in retirement, we have two other people that have their hands in our basket of money. One of those is the IRS, and we have to pay our taxes as we legally, owe our taxes. But there are things that we can do to make our tax planning a little bit more efficient. And then we also have Mr. Market, who has his hand in that money as well. Now, I would argue that of those two friends, or say partners rather, I'm picking the stock market all day because I feel like Mr. Market over the long haul has shown that he'll give you back more return. Whereas the IRS, they tax and take,
He's not giving you anything.
No, not really. So, so fear, the way you're feeling is probably going to be 10x worse in retirement. You're going to worry more about politics, even though, and I've said this time and time again, I think long-term, it really doesn't have that much of a difference. I think people's retirement plans shouldn't really be based on politics. Sure, we may have policy that may cause us to make some shifts and changes. And then just to kind of wrap it up, we tend to forget we have two other people that are involved in our retirement plan. If we look at our accounts and say we have $1 million in there as a retiree, well, we may not have a net $1 million because we don't know how we're invested. And then we also don't know, maybe we don't know the rate in which we're going to pull the money out. So the rate in which we pull money out will determine how much of a cut the IRS takes in the form of taxes.
All right, very good. So we're emotional when it comes to retirement. And then, of course, with money comes kind of certain behaviors or emotions, right? Behavioral finance, I think we call it. So from your experience, Graham and Cris, in working with people, observing their financial behaviors, what are some of the more common financial biases that you run into on a weekly basis?
Well, I'll tell you one of the ones that I bring up to people probably the most. And, we run into all of them a lot. But this is one that I'll actually use the term for people a good bit. And it goes back to what we were talking about a second ago. And that's mental accounting, which is kind of the process of looking at all of your different accounts as totally different entities and not looking at your whole portfolio as a total. And I think a big way that people do this is looking at their bank account and thinking that that is all the money that they have to spend in the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely guilty of this as well. I always tell people that, I feel way better when, I get paid and that money is in my bank than I do when I transfer then out to my retirement savings and there's less in my bank and more in my retirement savings. Yeah. Did I lose money when I did that? No, absolutely not. I didn't pay anybody that money. I still have it. I could go get it if I needed to, but it just feels like I have less money because I moved it from my spending account to my non-spending account. And so when people are initially retiring, or another common example of this, if someone like loses a spouse, I always think it's a good idea to maybe early on in that or in, retirement, keep a little bit more than you might generally in your savings account, and have income coming in there to give you that permission to feel like, okay, I have money. It's not like if you usually keep $10,000 in your bank and you have $1 million in your 401k, maybe keep $30,000 in your bank for a little bit. Just so okay, if I spend $5,000 here or there, if I get a nice vacation, I still have more than my normal amount that I have in there because I do think that's a big tendency. Another thing sometimes I'll tell people to do is it's not always a bad idea to, get one of those apps or websites or whatever that kind of aggregates everything in one place. So when you log in, you can see everything. And another, way that people will kind of do mental accounting is, not want to be more aggressive in one account than another. If they're 50-50, they just want to be 50-50 across the board, where a lot of times we encourage people to be a little bit more aggressive with more tax efficient money and less aggressive to balance that out with less tax efficient money. Like, more aggressive with a Roth than you are with the traditional, still trying to keep you in the same risk. But again, someone will say, oh, man, the market was down, during the tariffs or anything a few months ago. My Roth is down more than my traditional is. Okay, but if you look at your total portfolio, it's still doing, what a 50-50 portfolio should do. But when that upswing happens afterwards, you're going to get more growth in your tax efficient account. So, there's a lot of behavioral biases. Cris, you can touch on a few more, I'm sure, but that is one that I see all the time and I bring up to people very consistently.
Yeah, you mentioned something really, really good, Graham. I'm actually glad you touched on this. So just so people are aware, like we don't script any of this stuff that we talk about. And some of this stuff I'm not aware that Graham talks about in his meetings, but the similarities are kind of eerie at times. He mentions giving yourself permission to spend. So have money going into an account and sort of just giving yourself permission. And I literally had to tell a client that the other day. Actually, I say the other day. It's been several months ago. One of my longtime clients, been a radio listener for a long, long time. I told him, I said, you have to give yourself permission to spend. You have enough money, but you have to give yourself that permission to spend that money. Graham, you mentioned tax efficiency. Big deal. I mean, big deal with a lot of people. For example, dividend stocks. I don't know what it is, but retirees tend to love and gravitate towards dividend stocks. Me personally, I don't really like them because I think if I can pick a good basket of growth stocks, I'll outgrow that and the dividend together. There's a whole other reasons why I'm not a big fan of dividend stocks, but what drives me nuts is you've got individuals who maybe they're in their latter working years and they're making a lot of money in W-2 salary. So they're over the NIT level at 250 modified adjusted gross income, and they're buying dividend stocks to put in a after-tax account that are generating, say, a 4% dividend across the board, say on average. And that dividend is getting taxed at the 15% rate for capital gains, but then it has the 3.8 NIT tax on top of that. So instead of 15% capital gains, they're actually paying 18.8%
and
tax.
5% state.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so you're way. I saw someone recently who was up in the 37% federal tax bracket doing that, and it's like you're losing 45%, just about 44%, whatever, after all of that is said and done, just to taxes.
Right, but in their minds, it makes sense, and it's this whole bias thing that we're talking about. Here's another one that I see a lot is overconfidence. So if you are a Trump supporter, right wing supporter, you're confident right now the market's headed in the right direction. And I'm not going to disagree with some of the economic stuff right now in terms of what's being set up and that it's good for the markets. But just think about how you feel relative to how you felt during the Biden administration. It wasn't like we lost money the entire time that Joe Biden was in office. The market still made money. I think it was around 70% return, maybe a little higher. But now there has a tendency to be overconfident. And there's also the FOMO bias. It's not really listed, but we see that, the fear of missing out bias. The other side of that is loss aversion. So being I'm trying to think of the word to say, but you hate to lose money so bad that you won't put any of your other money in a position to make money. And we believe in retirement, it's totally okay to have some of your money safe and in a position where it doesn't lose. I get that. I understand it. I've dealt with enough people at this point. But if you created a longer time horizon, then you can be risky with some of the other money. But that's the whole loss aversion problem that we see out there. And I'll just touch on one more. Two more. Another one would be herding, which is just following the herd. You're doing what other people are doing and hearing it on the news and TV, and next thing you know, you're following that herd and jumping right in, and you don't really know what you're doing. So that's one. And then confirmation bias. I think this is. I'm looking at the list that I have kind of pulled up here online just to make sure I hit all the ones that are really important. Confirmation bias is something that I believe that as humans, let's just take the financial side of it out of here. We look for confirmation. Like if we go buy a new outfit, we kind of want somebody to say, hey, it's a nice jacket, nice pair of slacks or whatever, nice shoes in my case, because I always get compliments on my shoes. It's kind of funny. My son laughs about that, by the way. So I think as humans, I think we seek connection and we seek confirmation. So when it comes to, investments, you're seeking evidence. You will go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole to confirm why you've done something. And I think that is something that is also a big bias out there as well.
Yeah. And you see that a lot. I think that has become so prevalent with, just social media and the internet, and the fact that you can find someone
Yeah.
confirming your opinion somewhere, whether you find that in a news article, a Twitter thread, a peer-reviewed journal, it doesn't matter. You can find someone saying the same thing that you're thinking somewhere out there. So I think it has made it a lot easier for people to say, and, again, all of these things are, I'm not immune to these either. Yeah, there are times, even if not in a financial sense, if I'm, thinking something about, I don't know, there's something's wrong with my car and I'm like, oh, it might be this. I'm probably going to look up online and see if I can find other people agreeing with me before I go to my mechanic and then be like, hey, I think it's this, but I don't know. And I don't know better than him. But you can find somebody online, it seems like, to really kind of say anything. So for that reason, we'll see. You see people occasionally bring something up to you and it's just like, I don't know where they heard about that, but apparently there's a lot of other people talking about it somewhere, some group they're a part of, on the financial side or whatever else. So I think that has become probably more prevalent than in the past.
Yeah. And we tend to, just on that confirmation bias, it's a real thing. I mean, it really is, because we tend to hang around people that are like us, that confirm us.
That's true.
Which, by the way, Graham, I liked your polo today. It's nice looking. Very nice.
Oh, yeah. It's not a new outfit, but...
Looking for confirmation today. That nice polo in here. I'm in a t-shirt, by the way, Luann.
And you're in a t-shirt.
I'm in a t-shirt. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I had to add a collar today just to one up.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
We're not on video, so
not yet anyway.
Funny.
That is something we're going to do in the future.
Yeah,
so
we'll
looking
do
forward to
video
that.
here. Yeah. All right. So, you mentioned we're going to worry about politics possibly in retirement. And that was a question I have here. Do politics really play a role in decisions we make for retirement?
So, yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, on the small scale. And what I mean when I say that is, I said it earlier, was policy. There's certain things like the new tax code that was just passed, along with several things within the tax code that last for the next 3 to 4 years. I think you have to take a look at those. So that came out of politics a little bit, but it was really more geared towards policy, not politics.
Okay.
But what I see happen often, and I feel like this is the wrong move, is they've got political glasses on their face while looking at their financial statements or their retirement plan. And to give you kind of the picture, paint the picture here, is you hate one president so bad that you're willing to not do something that's in your best interest because you hate that individual so bad. So we had a few people back in the Biden administration years where they wanted to go to cash. They were so deathly afraid. And especially in 2022 when the market's dropping. And remember what I said a few minutes ago, the fear of how you feel about the market today is going to be 10x in retirement. So that feeling became real to people. And the feeling that they were feeling at that time, that is their true risk tolerance. Now, fast forward to the Trump administration. Now there's the overconfidence, right? If they're on that side of the fence there. So politics come into play they shouldn't. And I think that is one of the things that individuals and families really have to fight off, as hard as it is to fight off, because politics is very emotional to us, just like our money. And I see that becoming, it's a barrier that I think Graham and I have to fight through with people on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think the distinction of policy versus politics is a really important one to make, because policy, specifically on the tax side of things, can affect things. Obviously, as we've seen, on the global trade, all those things can affect, on a macro scale, but for a time, and like you're talking about, if you are retiring in your early 60s, even mid 60s, there's a good chance between you and any potential spouse, at least one of you is going to make it another 20 years plus. So, I mean, in that time, we'll probably have anywhere between 3 to 5 different presidents, different Congresses and all those different types of things. And policy will probably change a lot. I mean, if you think about how much the world has changed in the last 20 years, there's a good chance a lot of things will change in the next. But at the same time, through all of that, the people that have been retired the last 20 years, none of that completely derailed their ability to stay retired or be able to live a lifestyle, that was comfortable for them. My grandfather was a teacher, And so he retired a bit on the younger side. And he was retired for, I think, like 35 years in total. A very, very long time. And, through all of that time, he basically retired in a pre-internet era, pretty much. And
he had a great life then.
Yeah, he had a long life. Yeah. And, but, through all of that, tons of things changes, lots of market crashes, lots of market bull runs, all of those types of things. And, that did not ever impede his ability to be able to stay retired. And so I think for a lot of people, it is just about thinking about, it's a long time horizon. Things will change in the short term. There'll be different things that happen. But overall, you have to be thinking about it from a 10-year, 20-year time frame.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Graham, just tying into your grandfather, is this the one that recently passed?
Yes. Yeah. A few months ago.
Remind me again, how old was he?
Ooh, well, I know he was 87, but he always gave the months and the days too. I want to say it was 87. He put that on his gravestone. It was 87 years, 10 months, and 12 days. I want to say. I might be wrong on the days, but I'm right on everything else.
That's sweet.
He counted the days. So he got to live a very long retirement, which was great for him, gave him a lot of time to spend with family. He loved where he lived and everything too. So that helps. But it's about staying active, staying a part of your community and, just physically and mentally active.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I want to touch on something that you kind of talked about there, Graham. One, he retired early, so he had a long life or long life in retirement, which is great, which actually is counter to research. A lot of research says that the longer you work, the more likely you are to live longer. And typically those that are working are typically living longer than those who are retired. I know it doesn't make any sense, but you have this sense of purpose. You're staying mentally focused at work every day. And therefore, it's just kind of helping to extend your life. But here's the point I actually want to make through all of this. I did have somebody stop by the office yesterday. I can't say his name. You might have saw him come in, Graham. And basically, he stopped by the office to tell me about a pretty major health concern that he had. And he said that his worst nightmare was coming true, that he retires and now all of a sudden he starts to have all of these health problems.
Right.
I got an email from a younger retiree. He's the one that gave me the saying, 2 bad days, TBD. He's also the one that I told I had to give him permission. You have to give yourself permission to spend money. He emailed me several weeks ago. He's experiencing just some, I consider it to be mild. I think he'll get through it. Just some complications right now. And he's in his latter 50s at this point. And, he's like, it's too early for the slow go and no go years. I'm way too young. And so point is this, figure out when you're going to retire, build a plan, and go make memories. At the very bottom of like our notepads on the conference room tables, it says plan, retire, and play. That play portion is so important. The plan portion is really important, but the play portion is really important because we don't know how much time we're going to have left here on earth with our loved ones, whether that be our spouses, our best friends, brothers, sisters, kids, whatever. Spend as much time with those individuals as you can. Give yourself permission to spend money in retirement. Build the plan that will allow you to do those things so that you can do them with ease and without as much worry as possible. Luann, that is all we have for the show.
Oh my gosh, it's time. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, great show.
It's always good to be here with you. I hate it when we have to do a rerun.
Yes.
So I love having you here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Appreciate the listeners. Graham being here in his good looking polo shirt, of course. If you want to set up a discovery session with myself or Graham, give us a call, 256-937-2010. Again, if you're a federal employee, we'd love the opportunity to speak to you as well. 256-937-2010. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation for the servant heart.
Kelly Myers is not affiliated with WG Financial or AEWM.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisory requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.